Right then, it's Thursday, the 28th of August, and Celtic fans everywhere are still trying to catch their breath after what's been a rough, exhausting, and emotionally draining week following the club's exit from Champions League qualification. And while a bit of that familiar gloom continues to hover around Parkhead, it's impossible to completely ignore what's coming on the horizon. A derby day at Ibrox that could very well define the early tone of this season. Let's be honest, the mood among the Celtic support is not exactly cheerful right now. After the disappointment of the first leg and the bitter fallout that followed, the frustration has reached boiling point. There's anger toward the board, skepticism about Brendan Rodgers, and more broadly, a sense that things just aren't clicking at the club. The tempo's been off, the energy's missing, and the clarity of vision, both on and off the pitch, seems to have gone AWOL. But instead of diving into 20 straight minutes of complaining, let's try and take a slightly different approach today. Let's acknowledge where things stand, yes, but let's also try to take a forward look. Because like it or not, the season isn't stopping. And this Sunday, Celtic walk into Ibrox. Now, while Celtic lick their wounds from their Champions League collapse, Rangers have their own mess to deal with. And it's a big one. A 6-0 humiliation away to Club Brugge, 9-1 on aggregate. That's not just a defeat, that's a disaster. The kind of result that leaves a club in freefall. Russell Martin is barely 2 months into the job and already being talked about like a dead man walking. The support is furious. The players looked completely lost. And while it's tempting to sit back and enjoy their meltdown, the fact is, Celtic have no luxury to laugh from a high horse. Not right now. Because as bad as things look at Ibrox, Celtic's own house is far from in order. The Champions League failure wasn't just a missed opportunity. It felt like a self-inflicted wound. The squad looks unfinished. The performances have lacked any real spark. And Brendan Rodgers, despite all his experience, hasn't yet managed to stamp his authority on this team in a way that feels convincing. The shape looks flimsy. The intensity isn't there. And for all the talk of a reset after the European exit, the reality is that reset has to happen on the pitch, not in press conferences or dressing room speeches. Callum McGregor spoke after the game in Almaty about using the pain as a turning point, a moment to regroup and move forward. That's all well and good, but Sunday is where that sentiment has to be transformed into something real. The one thing that could genuinely lift spirits right now would be a derby win. It wouldn't erase the issues, it wouldn't fix the summer's missteps, but it would give the support something tangible to hold on to. A reason to believe. Because beating Rangers, especially this version of Rangers, should still mean something. And let's be clear, Rangers are a mess. Club Brugge exposed them brutally. 6 goals conceded, 10 men, and no backbone. Their system looks broken. Their defense is chaotic. Their players look as if they've mentally checked out. And Russell Martin? Well, let's just say he's not exactly inspiring confidence right now. The narrative is building around him, and unless something drastic changes, it's hard to see him lasting much longer. Whether he's still in the dugout on Sunday remains to be seen, but the pressure is deafening. The fans are furious. The media is sharpening the knives. And if Celtic show up with any sort of intensity, they have a real opportunity to twist the blade. But that's the big if, isn't it? Because Celtic right now are hardly a model of reliability. The form has been patchy. The attack has looked toothless at times. And there's a worrying lack of ruthlessness when it matters most. There's quality in the squad, no doubt. But quality means nothing without conviction. And right now, this team feels like it's playing with a weight on its shoulders, like the scars of past failures are clouding every decision on the pitch. The hope, then, is that new signings can provide a spark. Michel-Ange Balikwisha, for example, has reportedly completed his medical. And honestly, if he's available, he should be starting on Sunday. It's drastic, sure, but these are drastic times. Celtic are crying out for a bit of unpredictability, a bit of boldness, and throwing a fresh face into the fire might just be the kind of shake-up this team needs. Players like Daisen Maeda and Young have looked short of ideas in recent weeks. There's been a lack of width, a lack of cutting edge. Someone like Balikwisha, unknown quantity though he may be, doesn't carry the mental baggage of the last few weeks. He's not weighed down by expectation or criticism. That fearless energy could be exactly what's needed in a match like this. We've seen it before. Alistair Johnston came into the team and handled a derby atmosphere like a seasoned veteran. Even Hoda's debut at Ibrox was one where he stood out despite the team underperforming around him. Sometimes, it's the players with nothing to lose who play with the clearest head. That's what Celtic need. No more hesitation. No more sideways passes. They need someone willing to take on a man, stretch the game, and take risks in the final third. Of course, whether Rodgers will make that call is another matter entirely. The conservative side of his management has been creeping in again. His reluctance to deviate from safe options has cost Celtic before, and this Sunday feels like one of those moments where boldness will be rewarded. Rangers are wounded. Their fans are on the edge. If Celtic go for the jugular early, if they dominate possession and ask serious questions in the first 15 minutes, the whole place could turn toxic. Ibrox could eat its own. That's the opportunity. That's the window Celtic must try to smash open. And it's not just about Rangers being poor, though they clearly are. It's also about reminding this Celtic side of what they're capable of. Because beneath the chaos, there is a team here. A team with better players than their rivals. A team that should, by all measures, still be the top dog in Scottish football. That's not arrogance, it's fact. Even in this transitional moment, Celtic have more talent, more depth, and yes, a more proven manager. What they lack right now is momentum and confidence. A derby win could change that. But just as easily, a poor performance on Sunday could drag this whole campaign into dangerous territory. Because make no mistake, the pressure is mounting. Fans are already frustrated by the lack of big signings. The patience with Rodgers is thinning faster than many expected. And the boardroom continues to operate with an air of aloof detachment that only fuels the flames. That's why Sunday is about more than 3 points. It's about setting a tone. It's about drawing a line under the mess of August and trying to salvage something before the season runs away from them. And yes, the Europa League is on the cards. That's official now. It's not where Celtic wanted to be, but it's where they are. The format has changed, a massive 36-team league table, each team playing 8 matches. It's a new landscape. No safety net. No drop down from the Champions League. You either make it out of the league phase, or you're out. Simple as that. In some ways, it's refreshing. It's a clean slate. But it's also unforgiving. And again, while the prestige and money of the Champions League will always be the goal, it's fair to say this Celtic side, in its current state, might actually benefit from a Europa League campaign. Less exposure, slightly less pressure, and maybe a greater chance of putting together a run that gives the fans something to believe in again. Because as brutal as this sounds, would anyone really want to watch this current version of Celtic go up against a Real Madrid or Bayern Munich? The scorelines could get ugly. The Europa League, by contrast, offers something more attainable. Something that feels just within reach if the club gets its act together. So yes, this week has been heavy. The vibe has been grim. And the clouds are still hanging overhead. But Derby Day is coming. And in football, things can change quickly. One win at Ibrox, and suddenly the tone shifts. The frustration doesn't disappear, but it gets muted. The doubts don't vanish, but they get pushed aside. That's the power of these games. And that's why Sunday is enormous. All right, picking up from where we left off. Because as we look ahead to the Derby, there's still a mountain of issues to unravel, and even more questions that need answers. And nowhere are those questions louder than in the transfer market, where Celtic find themselves, once again, locked in that familiar late window scramble. It's been a recurring theme under this board. Waiting too long, dragging their feet, letting key moments pass them by, and then suddenly trying to patch it all up in the final days of August. And fans are rightly growing tired of it. Let's start with Balikwisha again, because that deal seems close. Medical done. London visit complete. All signs pointing toward a contract being signed very soon. But even with all of that, there's still this maddening uncertainty. When's the announcement coming? Will he be registered in time to play on Sunday? Is he even going to start? These are basic questions that should have been answered already. Because if Celtic were serious about strengthening, this signing should have been wrapped up days ago, not in a race against the Derby deadline. And then there's the other new name floating about, Sebastian Tenekti, a left-winger from Hammarby, Tunisian international, just 23, and already drawing comparisons to some of the players Celtic have had on the flanks in recent seasons. He's fast, tricky, a bit raw by the looks of it, but he's got the tools to cause problems. The issue, of course, is that Celtic have reportedly bid half of what Hammarby are asking. Classic. €3 million offered, Hammarby wanting double. And so here we are again, watching another potential deal dangle in limbo while the club plays a game of chicken over a few million quid. Now, let's just pause for a second and think about that. Celtic lost out on a Champions League group stage windfall worth upwards of 20 million euros. That's brutal, yes. But it also means this squad needs immediate investment to have any hope of stability this season, let alone success. So the idea that the club is trying to pinch pennies on a promising winger, at a time when attacking depth is clearly an issue, just feeds into the wider frustration among supporters. There's ambition in the scouting, but when it comes to execution, that's where things fall apart. And it's not just incoming players. There's plenty of movement, or potential movement, on the way out too. Young, for example, is being linked with Birmingham City, where Chris Davies is apparently keen to reunite the Korean contingent. With Kyogo and Tomoki Iwata already there, it wouldn't be a huge surprise to see Young follow them down south. And while some fans might shrug at that, it's worth remembering that Young, while inconsistent, has shown flashes. There's a player in there, no doubt. But if he does leave, it raises a deeper issue, one about recruitment, development, and whether this current coaching setup is actually capable of getting the best out of the signings it makes. Then there's Hayato Inamura, another name being floated for a loan move. No shock there, Brendan Rodgers all but confirmed it recently, and with Marcelo Sarachi now joining on loan from Boca Juniors, it's clear the left-back slot is packed. And here's the thing, Inamura hasn't actually looked bad when given chances. But Rodgers hasn't seemed convinced, and so off he'll likely go, another young talent temporarily cast aside. And maybe that's fine. Maybe he'll come back better, stronger, and with more first-team minutes under his belt. But it still feels like a symptom of the wider problem, a lack of clarity in squad planning, especially for younger players who arrive with promise and end up floating around the fringes. Meanwhile, Jacob Broom, the go-ahead Eagles midfielder, was another name linked heavily with Celtic in recent weeks, a creative spark, reportedly high on the list. But with the Champions League dream gone, reports are now suggesting that deal is dead in the water. Or is it? Because when you trace the story back to its roots, it's not quite as clear-cut. The original report came from a Dutch site, and the line about Broom missing out on a move to Scotland was more of a throwaway comment than a concrete update. Still, the damage is done, perception becomes reality, and now most assume the club has already walked away. And again, this is the problem. The noise. The half-truths. The way Celtic operate in the shadows and let speculation run wild. There's very little transparency, and that only fuels the anxiety among fans who just want to see a plan, a coherent, structured, football-first strategy that puts the squad in a position to succeed. Instead, what they get is ambiguity, indecision, and a constant sense that we're always reacting to problems instead of anticipating them. And that brings us back to the weekend. Because no matter how many rumors swirl, no matter who signs or who leaves, the reality is that this squad, this version of Celtic, has to deliver on Sunday. There's no hiding from it. The stakes are massive. Lose, and the storm only gets worse. Win, and it's a chance to hit reset, emotionally, psychologically, and maybe even tactically. The fans need it. The players need it. Brendan Rodgers definitely needs it. What makes this derby especially unpredictable is just how broken Rangers looked in Belgium. That wasn't just a team getting outplayed, it was a collapse. A full-blown capitulation. The kind of thing that lingers in players' minds. That hangs over a dressing room. And if Russell Martin is still in charge by Sunday, which, despite the pressure, seems likely, you have to wonder how he manages to lift his squad after something so publicly humiliating. There's talk that the dressing room has turned on him. There's whispers of friction between players and staff. And while it's hard to know what's real and what's tabloid filler, the performances certainly point to a group that has already lost faith. And yet, and this is crucial, derbies don't always follow logic. If they did, Celtic would have won every Ibrox visit over the past decade where Rangers were wobbling. But football isn't that simple. It's messy, emotional, and form often goes out the window when the whistle blows in these fixtures. That's why this game is so dangerous for Celtic. Because if they underestimate Rangers, if they take one look at that Brugge result and think the job's already done, they could walk into a trap. Because Rangers will be hurting. Their fans will be furious. And for all the tactical flaws and personnel issues, there's still pride in that dressing room. Still players who won't want to be embarrassed again. So if Celtic don't start strong, if they allow Rangers to gain a foothold early, the mood at Ibrox could shift fast. The crowd will sense it. The pressure could swing. And Celtic, with all their recent fragility, could suddenly find themselves under siege. That's why Rodgers has to get his selection and tactics spot on. No experiments. No square pegs in round holes. He needs energy, discipline, and, most importantly, bravery. Because the best way to quiet Ibrox is to go at them. Don't sit back. Don't wait to see how the game develops. Set the tempo from the start. Force mistakes. Turn the pressure inward. Because right now, Rangers are a cracked shell, and if you hit them early, they might not recover. But it has to be sustained. Not just 10 minutes of pressing followed by retreating into the shell. Celtic need to control the ball, control the pace, and, for once, be clinical when the chances come. That's been a huge issue in recent matches. Too many wasted opportunities. Too many poor decisions in the final third. That has to change on Sunday. Because derbies are often decided by fine margins. One moment of composure, one error punished, one header from a set piece. Celtic can't afford to be wasteful. And speaking of set pieces, how long has it been since Celtic genuinely looked dangerous from corners or free kicks? It's become a glaring weakness. Opponents know it. And in tight games like this, where clear-cut chances might be few and far between, set plays become vital. There's no shame in scoring a scrappy goal at Ibrox. In fact, it's often the scrappy ones that make all the difference. Celtic need to show they can fight as well as play. And if there's one player who embodies that balance, it's Callum McGregor. He's not been at his absolute best this season, but his leadership remains crucial. When the game starts to turn, when the noise gets deafening, he's the one who has to keep everyone focused. Because you better believe Rangers will try to drag the game into chaos. Slow the tempo. Make it about second balls and physicality. That's why McGregor's composure and control will be essential. Beside him, who starts? That's another question. Home. Hatate if fit. Paulo Bernardo. Rodgers has options, but none of them are perfect. And that's part of the problem. This Celtic midfield still doesn't feel settled. Still doesn't feel like a unit that can dominate a match. There's moments, flashes of promise, but not enough consistency. And in derbies, that inconsistency can kill you. Still, if there's a silver lining to all this uncertainty, it's that expectations have been lowered. Not by the fans, they'll always want to win, but by the mood around the club. Celtic are not flying into this derby with swagger. They're limping into it, battered by criticism and haunted by what could have been. And sometimes, that humility is a good thing. Because it means no one's getting carried away. No one's taking anything for granted. And if that fuels a bit more grit, a bit more urgency, then maybe, just maybe, that's what this team needs right now. So here we are, days away from one of the most pivotal matches in recent memory. A fixture that could steady the ship or tip it overboard. A moment where players can either shrink or rise. And for Brendan Rodgers, a chance to answer some of the growing doubts with something concrete. Something that speaks louder than words. Because press conferences don't win derbies. Statements don't win titles. Performances do. And right now, Celtic owe their fans a big one. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. The city of Glasgow has rarely witnessed such a whirlwind of anticipation as the one currently sweeping through pubs, terraces, and street corners, where every whispered conversation seems to revolve around one monumental possibility. MOHAMED Salah pulling on the green and white hoops of Celtic. Though no official word has yet been spoken by the club, the mere suggestion that the Egyptian king could trade Anfield for Parkhead has set imaginations alight, filling newspapers, podcasts, and late-night discussions with bold predictions and cautious excitement alike. Celtic Park, with its tradition of thunderous European nights, has long been considered a stage worthy of world-class performers, but the idea of Salah gracing that turf feels like something out of folklore. Some argue it could be the biggest transfer in Scottish football history, a move that would not only raise Celtic's profile across continents, but also alter the balance of power in a league so often accused of being predictable. Supporters, draped in scarves and still buzzing from last weekend's victory, speak of this rumor as though it were destiny written in emerald light. and even rival fans cannot deny the seismic shockwaves that would ripple through the country should the whispers prove true. Salah's potential arrival would represent more than just a high-profile signing. It would be a statement of intent, an assertion that Celtic are ready to dream bigger than ever before. Discussions among former players and pundits already highlight what his blistering pace and uncanny ability to cut inside could mean against packed Scottish defenses, many of which have rarely encountered such relentless quality. Comparisons to Henrik Larsson are surfacing, with older fans insisting that Salah could emulate, if not surpass, the impact of the Swedish icon who remains immortal in club lore. Imagine the electricity inside Celtic Park on a Champions League night, the floodlights beaming down as Salah races past defenders with that familiar low center of gravity, only to unleash a left-footed strike into the top corner. For years, critics have argued that Scottish football lacks the global star power seen in Europe's top leagues, but this rumor challenges that narrative and brings Celtic firmly back into continental conversation. Even neutral observers admit that should this transfer materialize, it would place Scotland once more at the heart of footballing folklore, turning what is often seen as a two-horse domestic race into a spectacle capable of drawing eyes from Cairo to California. The excitement, however, is tempered by a fair measure of skepticism, as seasoned supporters remind their younger counterparts of countless transfer tales that never materialized. Cynics point to the financial realities, questioning how a club like Celtic, despite its historic stature and fervent support, could realistically fund the wages of a global superstar accustomed to the riches of the Premier League. Yet, murmurs from behind closed doors suggest that sponsorship deals, merchandise projections, and global broadcasting rights could bridge the gap, painting a picture where the move is not only emotionally stirring, but also commercially viable. Some insiders hint that Salah himself might be seeking a new chapter, a stage less saturated with pressure, yet still rich in meaning, where he could become not just a player, but a symbol of football's unifying spirit. Such musings gain traction as clips of Salah's goals resurface across social media timelines adorned with Celtic crests and hashtags of hope. In every chant and in every speculative headline, the line between fantasy and possibility grows thinner, and while doubters may scoff, the Celtic faithful prefer to believe that miracles do happen in football, especially under the watchful glow of the Paradise floodlights. Within this feverish atmosphere, discussions inevitably turn toward the potential consequences for Scottish football as a whole. Should Salah truly arrive, the league's global visibility would skyrocket, sponsors would come knocking, and broadcasters would scramble to secure rights, all eager to capture the story of a superstar competing week in and week out against rugged defenders on cold afternoons from Dingwall to Livingston. Rivalries would intensify, not only with Rangers, but also with every club eager to test themselves against one of the world's most recognizable forwards. Young Scottish players, inspired by Salah's work ethic and humility, would find themselves training harder, striving for higher levels, knowing that they share a pitch with someone whose journey from Nagrig to Champions League glory embodies perseverance. Moreover, Celtic's European ambitions would be revitalized, with fans daring to dream of knockout stages and memorable nights reminiscent of their Lisbon Lions predecessors. The rumor, though unconfirmed, carries with it an aura of transformation, an idea that one player could elevate an entire nation's footballing image, reminding the world that Scotland still has the power to produce stories worthy of the sport's grandest stage. And so the city waits, caught between skepticism and euphoria, every passing hour only heightening the tension of what could be an era-defining announcement. In the cafes along Sachi Hall Street, in the stands of Celtic Park, and even across rival forums, the debate rages on. Is this simply a tale spun by hopeful hearts, or is it the beginning of something extraordinary? For now, Salah remains in Liverpool red, yet the mental image of him darting through defenders in a Celtic strip refuses to fade, feeding a narrative that feels too compelling to dismiss outright. What is undeniable is the joy the rumor has already brought, uniting fans in shared anticipation, stirring pride in a community always hungry for glory, and reminding the footballing world that even in the age of billion-pound transfers, romance still has its place. Whatever the outcome, these weeks of speculation have reaffirmed Celtic's standing as a club with ambition, tradition, and a support base whose dreams burn as fiercely as ever. And should the whispers turn into reality, the night Salah first steps onto the hallowed turf of paradise will not merely be remembered as a signing, but as the moment belief itself was reborn in Scottish football. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.